Hi, Denia, and hi, everybody. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So for everybody watching, welcome to Voices of West Windsor. This is our very first interview, and Voices of West Windsor is an initiative started by SR Mosaic and the West Windsor Historical Society in order to bring forward the more marginalized voices that have made the town of West Windsor the diverse and beautiful town that we know today. So the very first person that we're going to be interviewing is Denia Smith. So Denia, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, my name is Denia Smith. I'm a junior attending West Windsor Plainsboro High School South, and I am a local youth activist in West Windsor. I've been working in the realms of racial and educational equity. I recently led a march in honor of the Black Lives Matter movement in our community that had over 1,000 people at it. And for those that watching that did attend the protest, thank you so much for attending. And I've currently been working with the Board of Education at the West Windsor Plainsboro School District to make changes in the realms of policy, education, and programming so that students can come into West Windsor and feel as though that as students of color, that their experiences matter and that we can teach cultural pedagogy in our curriculum.
Thank you so much. You are truly an inspiration to all of us and everyone watching. So let's start with the interview. So our very first question for you is, what does West Windsor mean to you?
So to me, West Windsor is truly my home. I've been in the West Windsor Plainsboro School District my entire life, but I moved to West Windsor 7 years ago in 2013. And I moved here after entering upper elementary school, so a lot of my memories of growing up has been mainly in this town. This is where I planted my roots. I established everlasting friendships and honestly wondrous memories. And throughout the years, I've resonated with a lot growing up. I always remember going to the fairs that would happen in the summertime, volunteering at the flea market, attending local community events, and honestly just hanging out with friends at the 7-Eleven, the All Johns, the Thomas Sweets, and the Worry Mart. And throughout the years, I've grown so many memories with this town that has resonated with me greatly.
And in your opinion, what makes West Windsor unique?
Something that makes West Windsor unique is honestly the people. They bring a taste of different cultures, arts, history, religions, clothing, food, and music. The main thing that makes West Windsor is the people, because we are the life of the town. We all contribute different aspects of our own lives into the town, which ultimately makes a magnificent melting pot that becomes our community. And when members of the community share a piece of themselves with others, we are building relationships, unity, and our identity. Because of this, I feel as though that we are truly unique and special as a town. When you go to other towns, you're able to find similar demographics, but you're not able to find that spirit or that soul that makes us who we are.
And would you cite that as one of the reasons that you believed that there would be a lot of people that backed you in this protest? Because there's so many people in this town that all, regardless of their diversity, that band together.
Definitely, yeah. I feel as though unity is something that is really special in this town, whether it's in school and sports, which I participate in a lot, or whether it's just through the community. I felt as though when leading the march, I felt that I would be supported. Because even though I'm not able to see it all the time, I know that there are people out there that agree with me and people out there that would support me and fight for this cause.
And where do you see yourself as a person in this community of West Windsor?
I see myself in West Windsor as a lot of things. First of all, I'm a student, just your casual junior walking around having fun. And I also see myself as a youth activist working to pull the community together as one to combat racism and create a racially equitable society. I want to be able to advocate for racial and educational equity and to inspire other students to become change makers. Ultimately, I hope that when people see me, they're able to see the work that is being done to truly change our identity as a town so that we are more accepting and inclusive, and that they also see the work that's being done to push our town forward and to enact positive change.
What's a single word that comes to mind when you think of West Windsor?
A word that comes to mind when I think of West Windsor is that we are expanding. More people are moving into our community every single day. Schools are expanding and more buildings and apartments are being built. And overall, our town is truly changing its form from what it was in the past to what it now is in the present. And not only are we changing physically, but the members of our community are also expanding their perspectives to learn more about people. I think that's the moment that made me realize this is when I attended Village a while back ago. And when I drove by Village with my family and friends, we realized that Village grew tremendously. Like there was such a big change done to the building. And this truly proves that time is of the essence and that our community is changing so rapidly to the point where we aren't really noticing it. And with the current social movement, members of our community are starting to learn more and more and change their mindset. So not only are we going bigger, but we are starting to change our concepts and beliefs. I believe that this is truly the turning point in our town's history, where we not only see physical advancement, but we see a change in our ideologies. And I'm so excited to see how West Windsor will be like in the future.
Where do you see West Windsor in 30 years? You said it was expanding. What else? Where do you hope to see? What is the future you hope to see for it?
I hope to see West Windsor 30 years as more diverse, inclusive, and more racially equitable as the years progress. I know personally, currently within the town, there is diversity amongst the various cultures, but there seems to be a small percentage of African American and Hispanic families living here. And something that I do wish to see is that this population grows in terms of its minority population, along with the community making an improved effort to embrace its diversity. Something that I also noticed growing up here is that our town is so special. We have all these different cultures and all these different events, and we're honestly just so amazing. But there's not a really strong effort to consider and embrace our diversity. When our diversity is brought up, it feels as though it's only brought up to be a statistic, whereas something that we cherish and that we remember. And so I hope that as the years progress, the people in West Windsor start to embrace and acknowledge its diversity.
How do you think West Windsor can improve to hopefully reach that in 30 years?
I believe all towns can improve, that we can improve regardless, because no towns are perfect. And as far as West Windsor, we need to embrace the various cultures and perspectives from its citizens and to function as a unit in our community, whereas remaining divided. If we were to take the time to educate ourselves on different cultures, religions, beliefs, and backgrounds, and to actually come together to have these tough conversations, we could be so much stronger. And I also believe that West Windsor needs to realize that the world is bigger than us. I feel as though we kind of live in a bubble here and that we need to become globally aware citizens. That problems that occur in the rest of the world can equally happen here. And just because these problems don't happen here doesn't mean that they won't happen here. So I feel as though we honestly just need to open our eyes and realize that this town might appear to be small, but the things impacting the town and the things that happen here are not small, they're big.
Is there someone in West Windsor who has inspired you to do the incredible things that you've done?
Honestly, my family, more specifically my mom, through everything that I've done, my parents, my mom and my dad, they've both been so supportive and so outgoing and trying to help me in my efforts. And whether it was leading the march or honestly just reaching out to students to see who would be interested in enacting this change with me, my parents have been there with me every step of the way. And seeing such strong role models and seeing how much they support me truly encouraged me to support myself and to move forward with this work.
Now I want to talk a little bit about yourself. So you mentioned that you organized the Black Lives Matter protest at the West Windsor Community Park, and over 1,000 people attended. I want to talk to you a little bit about the process of you organizing the march and how you went about it and what was your thought process behind it. So what inspired you to organize the protest?
So one of the first things that inspired me to organize the march was witnessing George Floyd, a Black man that could have easily been a family member, someone that I knew, being murdered for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which I feel as though for a lot of the viewers was a graphic moment and truly inspired emotions within us, such as grief and anger and sadness. And I know that the first thing that I saw or thought of when I saw that video was, I have to do something. But at the time, I didn't know what that something was. I didn't know what it would manifest to become. And I know immediately after I saw that video, I also saw students just like me and you going out there, being the change in their communities, leading marches of over 10,000 people and truly becoming the change that they wanted to see. And when I was looking at these videos, I was kind of looking and like confused. And I realized over time that we all have the power within ourselves to do that. There's nothing that differentiates us. Like, we all have that power. It's the fact that we have to acknowledge that power within us and take that power and literally run with it. And something else that inspired me to organize the protest was recognizing the injustices being faced throughout the country and coming to the realization that those very same inequities can occur in our own backyard. When we look at the news, we kind of see the inhumane killing of Black and brown people, And we tend to forget that racism has no barrier. It can easily occur in our schools, our neighborhoods, and essentially everywhere. And once I realized that racism isn't something that's limited to one part of our nation, I wanted to share this information with honestly everyone. I wanted our town to recognize that this is a very real problem and that we must acknowledge it now before it eats us alive. And it shouldn't take an incident of racial inequity to occur in order for us to begin to care about racial justice. And so I organized the protest to make my voice heard and to acknowledge the problem and to fight so that West Windsor can become a more racially equitable town.
Did you ever think when you were starting it that it would grow to such a large scale as it ended up being?
To be completely honest, no. I attended protests in Plainsboro the following weekend, and there was a good amount of people, but it wasn't as much as it turned out to be at the one on that weekend. And so when I was planning mine, I was like, okay, maybe 50 or 100 people will show up. I don't think it's going to be crazy because I had no idea how far it spread. With COVID and everything that's going on, all of our communication has been like digitalized, and we have no idea who that flyer is going to. So when the march started and I saw all these people behind me, I was exhilarated. Like I was so excited and happy, but I was so scared at the same time because it was like, wow, there's really all these people that actually care about this cause. And it really humbled me and made me realize that it's beautiful, you know? So like our town cares, essentially.
How was organizing it? Were people helpful? How was the process of going about it?
Organizing the march that day, honestly, it was a lot. It wasn't chaotic. Like it was all like organized madness. It had a lot to do with talking to people because I know a lot of people came up to me asking for questions like, what can we do after this? Or what do you believe about this? So it's a lot of communication and people skills. And yeah, in terms of organizing, there was also a lot of students and organizations that came to help organize the march. I know there was a group of alumni from High School North and High School South who brought snacks and food. There was an organization that came so that a young woman could register to vote. And honestly, I feel as though organizing the protest wasn't only on my part. I led the protest, but it was the community that made the protest the protest. People came and contributed their own food and their petitions and everything that they had to do. And if it wasn't for the greater community of West Windsor, my protest could have never been as big as it was.
In the time that we're living with the coronavirus, and we are living in the middle of a global pandemic along with a million other things that are going on, how was the march that day?
I feel as though with COVID-19, it wasn't really a big concern in terms of social distancing. I feel as though people took it amongst themselves to make sure that they were wearing their masks and staying 6 feet apart. We tried the best as we can to have people from like students and people from other organizations like at most points surrounding the march to make sure that people were following social distancing and were following the proper social distancing regulations. But overall, I think it went pretty well in terms of organizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you hope to do in the future?
Something I hope to do in the future is, before I graduate, is to promote youth advocacy and to inspire the next generation of students to stand up and make their voices heard. Something I learned throughout this whole process is that a movement isn't only progressed by one person. A movement is a group of people working collectively and together to make authentic change. And so I hope that as I continue my work in the future, and honestly, as we go into school in September, more students will come who want to be advocates or people who just want their voices to be heard. And we can work together to make that change possible. And I know in terms of the future, personally, when I do graduate, I plan to continue my advocacy through organizations in college. And I do want to pursue a career as a civil rights attorney so that I can fight these injustices on the legal side.
Now, this is a question directed towards our town. In your opinion, do you think West Windsor is a diverse community?
I've heard this question a lot, whether it be through friends or in the classroom or honestly just throughout the general community. And I feel as though the most important thing we have to do is we have to define what diversity is in regards to our own town. Now, when you Google it, the definition of diversity is showing a great deal of variety. And I feel as though when people think of diversity, they think this diversity is only connected to race, which it's not only connected to. Diversity can be in regards to race, sexual orientation, culture, religion, and various other factors. And while I do believe that we have a large minority population in connection to race, I'm unsure of the diversity in our town in regards to other factors that contribute to diversity. And I believe that West Windsor isn't 100% diverse, but I believe we're slightly diverse. Like all towns, we aren't perfect. We're not going to be 100% diverse. We still have a lot of work to be done within ourselves and within our generalized community so that we can increase in the realms of diversity.
You mentioned that you're working with the school board to adjust our curriculum. So in what ways do you think that we can grow and improve as a district?
I think our school's curriculum should change and adapt in regards to the changing climate by acknowledging this current social movement in the classroom and to not be afraid to have those tough discussions. Personally, whenever I've been in a class and we decide to talk about racism or social justice, they treat it as though it's a thing of the past instead of the present. And we have to recognize that these injustices are very real and that they're occurring tenfold in our society today. And while this is unpleasant and it is a jarring conversation to have, it's ultimately the truth. And until we acknowledge the truth, we can't work to change it. So I feel as though starting to acknowledge these inequities in our society is a big part of it, which comes through changing the social studies and language arts curriculum. And I feel as though we all should include cultural pedagogy in our school curriculum and to start to train our teachers on racial sensitivity. Because I feel as though ultimately we can have the curriculum for the teachers to teach to the students. But until the teachers understand how they're supposed to do that, we're not going to have an effective line of communication in terms of our education. So it all starts with the curriculum and then the teachers and then to the students.
What specific things are you adding or thinking of removing in the curriculum?
Things we've been thinking of removing is certain novels within the language arts curriculum. I know there's been a lot of talk of To Kill a Mockingbird as a novel and whether or not that should be removed or replaced or something like that. We have been talking about that and how we can help teachers better teach that novel. We also plan on including books that pertain to the African American history. So stuff like W.E.B. Du Bois and James Baldwin and John Lewis and authors like those can be included in our curriculum. In terms of social studies, we want to expand beyond what is usually taught of American history. I know what's usually taught is the Revolutionary War, and it concludes at the Civil Rights Movement or the Civil War. I feel as though we need to expand upon our history and to start learning about things that we wouldn't usually learn about, such as mass incarceration and the war on drugs and stuff that happened before Barack Obama's presidency. There's so much that's just been hidden from us in our education system, and now is the time for us to become aware.
Do you have something you want to tell them to help them become ringleaders of change, such as yourself?
Definitely, yeah. I know that when thinking of advice for the youth of West Windsor, a lot of things come to mind, but I feel as though it can best be summarized in a quote by James Baldwin that says that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And with this, I believe that there's always a possibility of failure when we try to attempt new things, but we can't allow that to hinder us from the equal possibility of success. And that students need to be willing to make their voices heard and to fight for what we believe in. Even if there could be some bad side effects, it's always worth it as long as you know that you could potentially be changing a system or changing somebody's day. And some advice I have specifically for the youth of West Windsor who want to be activists is to not be afraid to reach out to other youth activists in our community and ask for help. I'm always available if anybody needs me. And also, don't be afraid to fight for something you believe in and to do research on what you want to advocate for and to truly discover your passion. After you pretty much know what's going to drive you in your fight, you can ultimately make your voice heard and you can utilize in-person communication or the digital world to do so. And I know that with COVID-19 and with the limited in-person gatherings, I know that it's been difficult for youth to socialize and to allow people to know what's going on in the world. But I feel as though by taking advantage of this digital era, we can create so much more advocacy and we can reach so many lives.
Thank you so much, Denia, for joining us today in this interview. It was truly inspirational to learn from you and to hear from you about your story. And because your story is West Windsor's story. So thank you all for joining us for this week's Voices of West Windsor, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.